It began like any other lively taping of Judge Judy's new primetime segment, Judgment Day Live, where celebrities were brought on to humorously debate trivial cases or act as mock witnesses for entertainment. The day Denzel Washington was invited, the audience came in expecting charm and light banter, maybe a few theatrical remarks and well-placed smiles. But what they witnessed instead unfolded into a rare, raw, unscripted exchange that none of them expected. Judge Judy, known for her brutal, sarcastic put-downs, had a plan to corner Denzel in a clever, playful cross-examination, a bit of TV that would amuse the audience and keep her show trending. From the moment he walked onto the studio stage with that dignified calm, she prodded with veiled barbs wrapped in jokes, trying to catch him off guard. "You played lawyers, soldiers, kings," she said, narrowing her eyes with a grin, "but here you're just another Hollywood guy who thinks he knows the law." The crowd laughed, thinking it was all in good fun. But the tone shifted almost immediately. Denzel, without losing composure, didn't take the bait. Instead of laughing it off or posturing with arrogance, he responded thoughtfully, calmly correcting her misquotes of precedent from an old case they were mock debating, citing actual legal doctrine, not from a script, but from what he had studied. Over the years, the cameras caught Judge Judy blinking. The audience went quiet for a second too long. She tried to regain control with another jib something about celebrities, confusing Google with law school, but Denzel didn't flinch. He leaned forward, gently but firmly challenging her argument about a clause in Fourth Amendment protections. Not with bravado, but with knowledge. His tone was measured, his logic airtight, his references accurate. He wasn't performing, he was engaging. It wasn't the kind of sharp-tongued Hollywood comeback she expected. It was worse for her. Was credible. It was real. And it made her look, for the first time in years, unprepared. As the exchange continued, Judge Judy tried to pivot, now attempting to recenter the humor and distract from the uncomfortable reality that Denzel was, in real time, correcting her. Understanding of constitutional implications in this mock case, she raised her voice slightly, threw out a few zingers, tried to dominate the energy of the room again. But Denzel's groundedness only made her seem louder, more desperate. Then he did something the audience didn't expect. Paused, looked at her with that weighty stillness he's known for, and said, "Judge, I came here for a conversation, not a competition. I respect what you've done for the law, but sometimes respect means calling out when something's being misrepresented, especially to this many people." The audience inhaled sharply. No cheering, no laughter, just silence and respect. It's because what he had just said didn't just apply to the debate, it applied to everything. Later in the episode. Producers fed Judy a new card one, with more aggressive talking points, something to shift the topic. She brushed it aside. Something in her had shifted. Even if the show was meant to be light, that she had walked into this moment assuming she could school Denzel, she hadn't realized he had studied law for years, not for a role. But out of personal interest, he'd sat in on trials, read judicial decisions in his free time, even mentored law students at UCLA without publicizing it. What she tried to treat as parody, he treated with principle, as she'd underestimated that. She turned back to him, this time genuinely. "Where'd you learn all this?" she asked. Not mockingly now, but with a curiosity that felt humbled. "Real life," he said, reading, listening. "And being black in America teaches you to learn your rights, whether or not you ever plan to use them in court." The audience responded with a round of applause, not because of a dramatic outburst, but because of the truth in that quiet sentence. Judge Judy nodded. For the rest of the segment, the tone softened. Denzel even joked once or twice, but now, the energy was different. She wasn't towering over him from the bench. They were speaking as equals. The conversation evolved from mock trial to real dialogue about legal perception, media responsibility, and the difference between knowledge and theatrics. And while the episode would later be edited down for rebroadcast, the internet had already clipped the original broadcast. The uncut version went viral within hours, with millions praising Denzel's restraint, intellect, and authenticity. By the next morning. Major outlets were covering the story with headlines like "Denzel schools Judge Judy with grace," and the actor who outlawyered TV's toughest judge. But Denzel didn't post about it. No interviews, no victory lap. Meanwhile, Judge Judy appeared on another show that same week, and when asked about the viral clip, she surprised everyone by admitting, "He made me think. I went in trying to humiliate him a little, I won't lie. But what he gave back wasn't ego. It was education. And if you're too old or proud to admit when you've been schooled, you don't belong behind a bench or a desk." That statement, rare and raw, earned her a new wave of admiration too. People respected a judge who could be judged. Asterisk backstage reports emerged later saying the producers hadn't expected any of it. One crew member tweeted, "I thought it'd be laughs and rehearsed burns. What we saw instead was one of the most honest conversations we've had on set." Denzel changed the temperature of the room. Quietly, conversations began happening in other studios about how networks stage intelligence, about how race and reputation often impact who's expected to be the expert and who's assumed to be the student. Denzel's calm, factual presence had disrupted that assumption on live television, and people noticed. Asterisk, a few months later, law schools began inviting him to speak not just as a celebrity, but as someone who had demonstrated sincere legal fluency and a broader understanding of public trust. He accepted one invitation at Harvard, where he spoke not from behind a podium, but seated in a circle with students. His theme, "Don't speak to be right, speak to be clear." Clips from that discussion circulated too, particularly one moment where a student asked him how he managed to stay so composed when someone tried to mock or discredit him. His answer, "Because if I react with anger, I'm playing their game. But if I respond with truth, they've got to play mine." Asterisk, in the months that followed, Judge Judy and Denzel never appeared together again. But their exchange lived on as a cultural touchstone, not just for celebrity clapbacks, but for how knowledge can disarm condescension, and how public discourse should be less about one-upping and more about illuminating. And while the entertainment machine moved on to new conflicts and moments, that taping stood out. It reminded people that sometimes the most powerful moments come not from shouting matches or viral insults, but from one person sitting across from another and saying, "I see what you're trying to do, and I came prepared with more than charisma. I came with clarity." The weeks after the viral moment passed with a strange kind of stillness for Denzel, who as usual refused to ride the media wave or capitalize on the attention. But silence didn't mean inaction. He spent those days reading deeper, revisiting landmark cases not for roles, but for understanding, and in the process, he unearthed something more profound than facts, a hunger to engage with how the law affects everyday people, especially the unseen, the unheard, those without a platform. And when a community legal advocacy group reached out asking if he'd sit in on a town hall about police overreach and constitutional rights in low-income neighborhoods, he arrived without cameras, without handlers, and the crowd, mostly skeptical at first, gradually leaned in as he spoke with the same grounded insight he'd shown on live TV. This wasn't a celebrity visit. This was someone choosing to show up and stay present even after the headlines faded. Asterisk, Judge Judy, meanwhile, couldn't quite shake the public shift that had occurred on her show. Her ratings remained steady, but her email inbox was flooded with commentary, some cheering her humility after the fact, others pressing her to explore more honest, meaningful conversations on air rather than formulaic conflicts. She resisted. At first, unsure whether the moment with Denzel was lightning in a bottle or a sign of needed change, but one afternoon she pulled up the full, unedited broadcast again and watched it alone in her office. Ouch! She paid attention not to what she said, but to how she said it, and it hit her. She had been playing judge for so long that she'd forgotten to be a listener. That realization didn't devastate her. It challenged her. So she started reaching out, not to celebrities, but to voices in criminal justice reform, community defense lawyers, legal scholars from outside the usual TV circuit. She didn't announce these plans to producers. She just started preparing differently.